Welcome.
Welcome.
Hi, Josh.
How's it going?
It's great. It's good to see you. And it's great to introduce you to my community, and it's introduced to be potentially introduced to your community.
Yeah, definitely. I noticed this. I'm so excited to connect with you. I just wish I could climb through the phone to hug you. It's just a natural impulse. So
Yeah, that's a great way to start. We could just hug our audience and inspire them to hug the next person they're going to find in their environment, just to get some oxytocin and some good vibes.
Yeah.
That's a good start to any meeting. Yeah, I was attending P3, the program that you run in Orlando 2 weeks ago, and I was overwhelmed not only by the amount of hugs in that community. Could you briefly explain how you came up with it, what it is, how to entice an unassuming audience that's interested in human development work of what's special about P3?
Yeah. It's I didn't create it, so I can't take credit for that. But my role now is just kind of tweaking it and seeing where it can be, evolved and just growing with the culture. But P3 ultimately is a sort of crash course in emotional literacy, is the way that I describe it.
Literacy, nice, yeah.
Emotional literacy that I'm able to, and emotional agility is the other way that we describe it. It's like I get into my emotions, I can feel them, they don't hijack me, they don't take control of me, they are a companion to my experience. So I'm able to feel fully, I'm able to be a whole human being and enjoy that process and make it work so that I can actually go after the things that are really wonderful about life and exciting. And not just living a life, I think of, like I was listening to something about this, it's not just about living a life that is happy and like the pursuit of happiness. I think that's sometimes a luxury, that's a tertiary thing in comparison to living a life of purpose.
Yes.
Like living a life of purpose and having meaning attached to the things that I do is an intrinsic part of being a human being. I think it's an imperative that we pursue purpose and meaning in our lives. Whereas pursuing the things that make me happy can be fleeting, and they can be well, happy when I shotgun through 3 seasons of Netflix and I'm just like withering away, covered in Cheeto dust on my. That makes me happy, but like living a life of purpose, like that's so much more, and it has longevity. Whereas like temporary motivation or happiness is fleeting. It withers very quickly. So with P3, the goal there is really about getting people back in touch with that purpose. Like what is, necessarily believe what someone else believes, but what is your core meaning? What is your essence? Who are you truly as a human being? And sort of reorienting yourself back on track with what your life is intended to be, whatever that may mean for you.
Yeah. And the 2 words that you just used, who are you, who am I, and what's your life intended to be, intention. And identity and intention are the very, very core of my work. So what we do in TrustTemenos is in various formats getting people to a place where they know more about who they are and what they want than they did before. And ideally at a level, or come to a level where they have this sense of purpose. And this is how I see the 2 methods, the 2 bodies of knowledge integrate, because Temenos work is very often emotional, but it's not explicitly supporting that literacy that you mentioned. I like that literacy even better than the agility. I had heard the emotional agility before, and yes, it does that, but the literacy is the thing that comes first, that you know your emotions, that you can understand what's going on and talk about it and integrate it. Because what then Temenos does is give you lots of options for storytelling about how you came to be who you are, being an author of your life, which gives you authority over it, and then looking at the patterns that lead to the situations, lead to the emotions. And when you look at the patterns in your life that I play, and you get to a point of choice where you can decide, okay, this pattern is actually serving me well, grateful to my parents, teachers, or younger self, that I picked that up and that this is actually helping me, but also identifying those patterns that are just shit and that don't help us at all and that hold us back or lead to limiting beliefs and all of that things. And I've seen how those came out in P3 and how I could face them, overcome them, and work with them in a way that was extremely effective, very different from storytelling, but just heads on facing the emotions and going through it. And that was liberating and rejuvenating as an experience for me, and unbelievably effective in just 2 days.
Yeah. It always surprises me what can be accomplished in such a short period of time. Even like with P3, obviously that experience, even with your course that I got to take, the PAL 1 course, like just the amount of information. And I'm sitting here thinking P3 goes it's like 2.5 days, right? It's like Saturday, and we're there the whole time, and it's like eat like everything but sleep. And with yours, it's like we're leaving at we're wrapping up at like 5, 6 o'clock, and I'm like, like how it's so short. And then when I'm walking away, it's like my brain feels so full. I have so much to chew, so much to process now, and like I've like learned so much in that duration that I think like for the following week afterwards, I'm like still just like thinking about it, and I'm journaling, writing it down, and but there's so many implications of this information, and like
wow.
Like the reverberations of the work and what I learned during that time have carried, like I'm still processing it. I'm still coming up with like new insights and connections as to like how that fits into everything I've been doing so far.
Awesome.
It's always fascinating to me, like what can actually change someone's life. Even, and it feels somewhat insignificant, but it's like if you have intentionality and you have significance, it really is miraculous.
Yeah, that's great. That's what I was looking forward to in this conversation, that we kind of piece together what are the things that make each of our work magic and how we can amplify it so that it integrates to something that's even more life-changing. I guess that's a nice aspiration. And what you just added to, I had this emotional work, story work, and what you just added is like the cognitive framing, understanding, like making sense of it all, so that it's more than just experience and more than just story, but also the ability to conceptualize what happens to you and what you made happen in your life. And then with that conceptualization, being able to take it forward and to live through future changes with the same level of reflection and understanding that you now gained for your past.
Yeah, I think that's probably like of all the sort of, I don't want to say problems, but like areas that I focus on the most is how to make that like lasting change. Because it's like create the experiences, and we can try to even like help people rewrite their story and do that stuff. But like how to sort of plant the seed so that it's mine now. And I think like like when we talk about belief systems, and especially limited belief, like core beliefs are some of the hardest things to change. I mean, like in therapy throughout, it's just like how do we actually like really do it? So people try their hand at it, and I think it is that piece of like really giving people enough of the culmination of the experience, the story, the environment, every aspect of sensory information is in line with this idea of I'm tapping into a truth you already know about yourself.
Yes.
Like, I don't think I have the ability to give anyone a piece of information that they don't already have in some capacity and then act it and adopt it. It has to align with something. Like, I think about the movie Inception. That whole concept of, like, it has to be such a simplistic, like, thing. It has to be like of who I am, and that there has to be a piece of me that resonates with it.
Exactly. So my understanding of a human personality, it's like an onion of stories.
Yeah.
And we peel that onion, which is why we cry so much during that process. And we need to find the level at which, or the story through which that belief was formed.
Yeah.
And one thing that Temenos does, but that P3 does a lot more intensely because of the sheer amount of people supporting you, like this level of care, that even in the short amount of 2 days, you get to really let go, because you know people are caring for you. Literally, you need your head wiped, you need water, you need fanning, you need listening, you need hugs, whatever you need, it's taken care of. And there are enough people there that you're really sure, and you know the people who are caring for you. So you start trusting, you start letting go. And this level of safety, kind of, it basically, in my mind, it metaphorically creates a womb. So that you actually get to that level of safety back when the first story is formed in the middle of your onion.
Yeah.
So that if you trust this enough, and if you let go enough, and if you're willing to go down that far, you can actually rewrite a lot of your life in this short amount of time.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think with P3, a lot of the things, at least the way that I sort of envision that work, is like creating corrective emotional experiences.
Correct. Yes.
So if I have an experience where I am finally sort of getting the perfect mixture of all those needs that went unmet throughout my entire childhood, my pain that I endured, if I got the things that I needed originally, it's like
exactly
the emotional pain starts to reintegrate. It's like, oh,
yes.
okay, I'm onto this. I can survive this. I have the support that I once thought I didn't have. So now it's almost like it resolves the problem of there wasn't someone there. It's like, well, there's someone
yes.
there, and I don't know the difference between the past and the present, so I'm good.
Yeah. Yeah.
Finally be sort of put to bed where we can actually move on to, okay, now what's next on the plate now that issue is and showing up in my daily life.
Yeah. Conceptually, that's really interesting because we're kind of using the fact that traumatic experiences are not stored in time in the brain. And we're just recreating what should have happened or what should have been the surrounding that could have saved us. And because the memory is kind of floating around time in our memory, we can actually change that.
Yeah.
Fascinating. Yeah.
Cool.
Beautiful. So what do we create from this? One of our intentions is to bring P3 to Berlin.
Yeah.
What else would people in Berlin or people who will consider coming to Berlin need to know about this that we haven't shared in the past 10 minutes yet?
Yeah, I guess probably one of the things that I would want people to know is that, especially when it comes to things like P3, and even I imagine the work that you do with TrustTemenos, is it's not necessarily about having to be wounded or damaged in some way in order to benefit work. I think there's a what is it, sort of like this implication or this idea that, well, this is for people who are really struggling and really suffering. And I mean, certainly we have plenty of people who come to us who really are at the end of their rope. I mean, we've had people who are absolutely suicidal and done with life come through the course and benefit tremendously from it.
Mm-hmm.
But separate from that, there's this idea of like people who come through the process wanting change in their life from a place of real autonomy. Like, I'm not waiting.
Yes.
Everything is at an 11 and can't tolerate a single breath anymore. And I just that desperation can be wonderful motivation, but also coming from a place of like, man, my life is good. What happens if I really just like pick myself up by the ankles and shake out everything that's been, I've been carrying around? Like, where's the dead weight that I can actually free myself up? Yeah,
that's totally me coming to Orlando last weekend before last.
Perfect example of it. It's like, well, my life is good and things are like, I'm operating in the world very effectually, but like, what could happen if I really like reassess everything? Let's go back down to foundation and then rebuild from there. What are the things that are necessary? And what are the things that are just like loose screws that I don't need anymore? Like, I don't know what this together, but it's not here anymore. So get rid of it and lose the weight. And then, wow, I feel so much more flexible and I have so much more, like, the world seems so much more vast now.
Yeah.
I have opportunity that I didn't wasn't able to recognize prior to this. So like the empowerment piece, I think, is huge with this work.
Yes.
Because that's, I think, at the core of it all. It's like, what are we really tapping into? And it's people's empowerment, their ability to actually have power over aspects of their lives.
So if you want to spend a weekend being able to wow yourself,
yeah,
that would be a good intention to come with.
Yeah. If you're sort of, fascinated, if borderline addicted to the aspect of constantly reinventing yourself and seeing what you're capable of, then yeah, that's another reason why this course is so profound, I think.
Yeah. One thing that needs explanation, I think, is the two different ways to participate.
Yes.
So I participated as a student, and then the senior participants, the alumni, participate again, providing all of the support that I already mentioned. And because we don't have a huge community in Berlin, while there will be people from Orlando flying over and joining, which I'm totally astonished by, but now that I've met them, I believe it.
Yeah, group for sure.
Yeah. So we will need a group of supporters who we decided we wanted to offer an additional day before the weekend for them, a kind of training in the methods, so that they can then go through the weekend supporting the people to attend. What would be their takeaway? What would they get from this day of training? And what would their experience look like if they haven't gone through this process themselves?
Yeah, if they haven't gone through the process themselves, it's going to be, honestly, like I could imagine this as being potentially an even better experience. In the way thinking, we're going to be doing a one-day training, at least that's the way that we're planning, where we work through every aspect of the course at multiple levels to really give people the feeling experience of what it's like to go through the process, and then immediately they're thrust into the experience and having to learn, like almost like trial by fire. And I don't think that there's a better learning experience available than like, see one, do one, teach one, like that. It's like, so we're going to do the one day piece where you're going to see it, you're going to do it. Like that's the whole process of that one day, is you're going to see it and you're going to do it. And then you get to teach it to someone else. You're now in charge of someone else's experience of it. They're going to go through it slower and more intense. So it almost magnifies the experience for those people who are going to be assisting us, because they get to just be sort of doused in the fire of everything that this course is. And then they have to train them, like they get even more exposure to it and repetition. Yeah.
So that sounds like any health professional and any coach who wants to do this kind of emotional work would definitely benefit from this kind of participation. Does that sound fair?
Yeah, coaches, mental health professionals, they're going to have because they're already sort of thinking in the mindset of, I know how to work with people, I know how to help them. This will just magnify all of that. And it makes it kind of exciting, because ultimately it's not so much the purpose of an assistant in the coursework is not do this exactly the way that we say to you. It's be a human being as authentically as you can, and help you work through all the stuff that prevents that.
Yeah, so, and as a participant who went in, as I mentioned a couple of minutes ago, not with a big bunch of problems, but fairly happy and content, and I didn't fall apart as much as some other people. I know that some of the assistants in our group went through, like I'd say, more painful processes than I did. So it's still possible, even if you are an assistant, you're still going through the processes, you're still experiencing this learning in emotional literacy and emotional agility. You're just also supporting somebody else, and you definitely need to make sure in a group that you're still supporting the actual participants. But given the number of people, that was working extremely well, and it definitely added to this whole emotional field that was created in the room.
Yeah.
Which was this caring, and it had this very strong sense of, I'm not alone. Like nothing I could have done in that room, literally nothing, would have been judged as too much or weird or out of bounds, or everything like you can show up as a human being with all of your shit, and it's okay, and you'll be welcome. And that's amazing. That's a quality of container that we also want to create in Temenos. So that's again an outcome thing, where things actually, the two methods totally match and totally integrate well.
Yeah, and one thing I would add in terms of the people who are going to be assisting is that the one thing it does very much require of them is a lot of courage.
Yeah.
Because they're going to be the ones, you know, in addition to the instructors of the course, they're going to be the ones who sort of set the pace for everybody else. So the more willing they are to jump right in and take chances and you know, possibly do it wrong, and that being okay, and showing, like, pave the way to show everyone else it's okay to be a human being.
Yes.
As wonderfully flawed as we all are, it's perfect. Like that's the only way that you can process, and then it makes it so much safer for everybody else. So the amount of courage to be the first one to jump in and show, see, it's safe. I jumped into the dark, murky waters and I didn't get slaughtered. Like, it's safe, and I showed that. The rest of the students taking the course can follow suit.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, so it will be messy. The more you either enjoy that or are willing to dive into that courageously, the more suitable you are to be an assistant in this course. Yes.
Yeah, and I think the concept of like knowing when to abandon structure is important as well.
Yeah.
Because at times, and I'm guilty of this as well, it's like I have an idea of how something is supposed to look, and the longer I stick with that idea that is not in line with what's going on in the room or what's happening with other people, then I start to become rigid, and I'm actually inauthentic in that moment, because I'm showing up planned, I'm showing up strategically, and it's like, well, this is the way that this is supposed to be. That's not genuine for me. It's not genuine for the rest of the room. So being able to kind of that flexibility and knowing that it always works. Like when people come together with the intention of connection, it always works. I've never seen this fail, which is sort of a statement. Like when people really want to come to feel and to connect, it just happens.
Yeah, and I can add to that as like I facilitate in a very similar way, I think. And you're having seen you facilitate and you see me facilitate, both of our flexibility with exactly this is fairly similar. And working with people in a work environment, so when people come to a leadership class, they do not expect this level of messiness. They do not come in necessarily with the intention of deep connection. But me providing a space with a clear intention and a very, very firm belief that at their core, they all want it. Even if they don't know it, even if they consciously deny it. But my firm belief is that every human being wants and cherishes in that connection. And in hundreds of people attending these classes in 2 years, I've had people being skeptical. I've had conflicts about this. But I've never had somebody not connecting in the end, because in the end they yield to their own humanness, and then they love having it come out, even if it's just a bit, and even if it's like not as dramatic and not raw. Like people who would be afraid of your T-shirt because they neither want to run nor to roar, but who still engage because they're human. And that's beautiful about these processes, and the way we gently facilitate people towards their freedom.
Yeah, well, gentle nudges in the right direction.
Yeah,
exactly. I do want to say something about watching you facilitate, and just something that I'm still marveling at, and I'm like sort of challenging myself to practice, is you do just a fantastic job of not imposing structure yet maintaining boundaries. And
Mm-hmm.
those two, I think before I saw it and before I really kind of see what you were doing, I think those two seemed the same to me for a long time. Where it's like, well, there's structure and then there's like I have boundaries about the structure of the course. And for you, there's like, I have boundaries about what I'm willing to do and not do in the course. And yet I will allow you all to create the structure. Like I don't have to control that component of this work. I'll allow, like it's almost, I guess, I don't know if this is true for you, you can clarify it, but the story I made up is that you have enough trust in the process of people just showing up in the way that people like to organize and being able to communicate their needs, that you trust that people will create the structure given the opportunity. And then the boundaries around how the process continues is the thing that you will reinforce.
Exactly. I wasn't aware of the boundaries bit. And it's very, very matching with the way I think about this whole thing. But you just made something clear to me that I wasn't fully aware of. So I knew I did that, but I didn't know how. And it's the boundaries thing that makes it, that ties it together. So I was aware that instead of imposing structure, I let order emerge. That was like my level of understanding of the thing. And I was also aware of what you said about trusting people to come up with what they need. And at some point in the course, I usually say, I provide less structure than some or most of you may need, because I trust you to ask for it. And the course is set up in a way that it intentionally confuses people at the beginning and puts them into a state of not knowing what comes next, not knowing when lunch will be, not knowing if or when we're going to have a break, not knowing if I'm actually going to share the agenda that's on the wall at some point, things like that. I intentionally do that to have enough, to create enough friction for somebody to at some point speak up. And sometimes it happens at the very beginning of the course when somebody says, I don't like the music you're playing, can you play something else? And I'm like, yes, I know there's not only AC/DC on this planet. And sometimes it happens later because somebody says, I need to pee, can we have a break? I said, sure. And but the boundaries that we don't usually get to, but yes, I have boundaries, and I have fairly clear boundaries in the back of my mind about like how long it may take until that has happened and things like that.
Yeah,
so that's
I think with the boundaries piece too, like there wasn't a point at which I saw you having to do much work to defend them and to take care of boundaries because of the level of clarity that you show up with.
Yeah.
Like there's this concept, I'm still marveling at this, by the way, like there's this concept of
Thank you.
showing up with such authority and yet flexibility at the same time.
Yeah.
I think when you talk about the creation, like creating confusion early on, I think most people wouldn't trust that right at the beginning. Is like, okay, you're showing up powerfully, but you're not imposing structure. And those two things often coincide, is that, well, being powerful means that you're overpowering.
Yes.
The typical way that we see those two forces at work versus just being powerful and not having to do anything. Like I'm not doing anything, yet nothing is undone, right? It's like that.
I feel so seen. That's beautiful.
Yeah, and I think people don't necessarily immediately trust that because that's not what we normally encounter. And so like as you're going through the confusion state, you know, like the forming, norming and storming parts of the group, we get to that point of like, oh, you're not wavering on this. Like this is who you are consistently. Like you're powerful, don't impose structure, and now I feel empowered.
Yeah.
Which, like I'm just now thinking about this. I think that's probably one of the best ways to sort of distinguish the difference between power and force. I like being powerful encourages and invites other people to be powerful as well.
Yes. Beautiful.
Force, overpowering requires other people to be less powerful in order to lift me up. Like there's that distinction.
Beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think you do that phenomenally well. I'm still like basking in like, oh, the course is so, I got so much more out of that than I could have possibly anticipated. I was just like, I finally get to be a student. I don't have to teach this.
Wow.
Just a breath of fresh air, and being able to see someone else in their element, like the way that you you're in, you know, like you're a duck on a pond. And it's like, I know underneath everything's churning a mile a minute, but on the surface, it looks so effortless and so beautiful. Like marveling at it.
Oh, I love your metaphors, man. And thank you. I worked hard for many years to be able to accept gratitude like that in a way that actually reaches deeper parts of my body. Thank you.
Yeah, and I love seeing the concept of someone facilitating this kind of work where it's something that comes from like your core. It's not, I'm trying to impress anyone. I not at a single moment in the time that I've known you have I seen you show up with ego about this. It's not, I have to be the person who tells you this thing and I have to, you know, be the sage on stage kind of thing. I just haven't seen you do that at all. You take responsibility and you take accountability for the things that you create, and then you also give credit to other people and you lift other people up. You know, like even during the course, like you're encouraging, like, well, you know more about this than I do. Why don't you teach this more? And I think those kinds of things show it's like we can be. It again reinforces that mutual empowerment that you can be, I can be amazing, and that doesn't have to conflict in any way. So it really creates so much, I think, so much freedom for people to learn this stuff where it's not you're the teacher and I'm the student and we're locked into these things. It's well, wow, I wonder what I'm going to learn today. And this is exciting and it's challenging all the right ways.
Thank you.
I'm still basking in the experience.
I can feel that. And it's, I love it. I'm happy to have created that experience, happy to have co-created this relationship. And I'm so looking forward to how we're going to shape next year. 2019 won't know what's headed. Yeah,
not at all.
So what's a format in which we could bring these two things together? So what would you, and for anybody watching this video until now, and actually now this is something we haven't talked about before. So it's an exploration very openly. Like how could we get storytelling plus P3, Temenos plus P3 experience together?
That's a good question, and I've been thinking a lot about it. Like, what are the what is the area in which that this would bring something new to both of our teaching and in our experience with this? So I'm still not very clear. I know that I like the idea, kind of like what I already said, is like that concept of real empowerment that it brings and lifting other people up to utilize this in a very clear and concise way to others. I think one of the places where I don't think P3 is lacking in this, but I think P3 is designed for self-mastery.
Yes.
It's an inside job. I want to work on me and I want to work on my shit and figure out how it impacts my life and how I can improve those sort of things. So it's all about home base. And the piece that I liked about your work and just a glimpse of it that I've received so far, because I know that it's, but the pieces that I love is how it implicates others. And like when we're talking about group dynamics and we're talking about team building, about communication on a larger scale that isn't just about I'm madly in love with you and I want a more profound connection with you. It's like, well, yeah, but then there's also the varying degrees of people that I interact with on a daily basis, and how do I want to improve my connection with them? And it doesn't have to be we're both crying our eyes out and connecting in this really deep and profound way. It can just simply be being genuine and connecting and understanding the dynamics that are at play when we're in conflict and when things don't go exactly the way that we planned. So
beautiful.
Finding
a way. Sounds like something that one could do with a leadership team of an organization.
Yes. Yeah, so that's probably the place, like in terms of like which population we can address. That's the place that I would go to, is people who have people under their care, who are in their charge, that they impact the most. So getting to a select group of people so that they can actually ripple outward what they learn.
Yeah.
And about making sure that every single person has their butt in a chair in a course that we're doing. It's, can we affect enough people to actually make that ripple that affects and benefits the most people as possible.
Beautiful. That's an interesting frame. So we could either work with the leadership team of a larger organization, or get senior executives into a room and have them understand this work.
Yeah.
That sounds like something we could work with, and we could start to talk about framing a message around.
And it really being, I mean, the implications of that are vast in terms of what you can actually do. Like, I think it'd be easy to sell, I guess is what I'm saying, in the sense that there's a lot to be gained by this. Most people, I don't think most people actually really either take the time to stop and reassess where their energy is being spent.
Yes.
And where they're actually losing resources in terms of like personal, like where's my energy going? Where's my focus going? How am I into my inner motivation, my desires? Am I doing good, proper self-care, not just like, and then what that means for the goals that we have set for ourselves and what we really want to accomplish. People who have that level of impact on others, I mean, you have to be pretty motivated in order to earn that position in the first place.
Exactly.
And realizing that I could be even more efficient in the way in which I'm impacting the world. Like, that's exciting.
Exactly. Yeah, and having that as a role model in a big organization would have a lot of impact on the culture, on the way other people show up around you. Would give you so much impact on the human and cultural level on top of your professional impact. That would be conducive to change. Like so many leaders these days ask, how can we change the culture of our organization? And the question I always ask is, okay, you are the leader of this organization. Is the way the organization works the result of your leadership? And usually they say yes. And then I ask, what kind of leadership is that organization going to need that you're going to want next?
Yeah.
And then they were like, oh, I mean, I need to change. And the container we could create together could be an extremely effective container for them to kind of have this loving mirror of seeing how they show up with themselves, how they could better take care of themselves, and how they then could show up to their organization, in their organization, as leaders in order to get that organization to where they want it to be.
Yeah, I like it.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah, that would be, oh man, that would be powerful. Yeah.
Cool, let's do it. And talking about inspirational ideas, you started with something this morning, news reached me this morning about your new Patreon page.
Yes.
What's going to happen with that? What do you want to tell people apart from going at it, looking at it, supporting you? What's the background of that? The story.
Yeah. So a mutual friend of ours introduced me to that page, Lindsay Walls. She basically introduced me to the concept of it, which I really love, because there's always been this idea of like being a patron of the arts. Mm-hmm. So the understanding is that the website was started for artists and creatives and people who like, do things, so that people can just say, well, I'm not going to like just wait for, whatever, like signing label gets your music out there, or so like if your art is readily available, I want to pay the artist directly so that you just continue creating awesome stuff and be a support to that. So the way that the page works is that you have tiers of support, for financially. People can give you $1, they can give you 10, they can give you 20, whatever. And based on those tiers, as the creator, you get to offer people, sort of special little perks as to being a supporter for you. So for me, like, obviously, now, it's like, well, you get, a handwritten thank you letter from me, and then you get to be a part of a video channel and ask questions. and that's only for that group. And then you get a t-shirt, and then you get this, and you're like, hours of coaching or whatever it is that you possibly get with each tier, so that you get to support the person who's doing this stuff and just being a force for good in that. And then you get to also, sort of reap the benefits of like seeing the creative process. And like what I see a lot of people doing well is like they show a lot of behind the scenes work, and this is how we get into this. Some of the planning to do is showing like the 8-foot whiteboard that I have, like showing what it looks like when I dump my brain out, because like this is how I think sometimes, and it's a huge mind map of jumbledness, but it makes sense to me. It's like, I don't know if people find that interesting, but it's like
I would
happy to share like how I move through the process of like figuring out how to design personal growth work and how to design exercises and what are the things on my mind at all times. So anyone who really cares about the work that I do, they get to kind of see what's going on. And then also post videos where it's just like, I'm rambling about an interesting topic. Like, what's the difference between pain and suffering? Like, what's the difference between, like, why does entitlement go with victimhood? It's like, oh, let me talk about that for an hour. And people can find it interesting, and you get the first glimpse of it by being a supporter.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the pain thing was one of my takeaways from P3. So I had known this Buddhist mantra of pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. Yeah. Suffering is a choice, and had integrated that for years. But what I took away from P3 on top of this was something that you said was, in my words, that pain is what creates the beautiful patterns on our skin. And we wear our pain as beauty as we go through life. It's what shapes us. And to anybody who has a tattoo, this will make very visceral sense. Yeah. I hadn't thought about that before, but I told it to somebody who has a tattoo, and I wanted to tattoo it onto my leg when you said it. So, yeah, that's great. So yeah, pain and suffering is a very, very interesting topic, and entitlement and rank and privilege is also.
Yeah, that was on my mind this morning. Usually, like when I'm like getting ready during the day, like I'll have these like little ideas. That's another one that we'll probably have to talk about that at some point. Is the concept.
I'm very, very sure we'll have another conversation like this. And I'm guessing that to anyone who might be watching this video on YouTube, we've stretched attention span a few times. So let's bring the conversation to a close, and hope that people like this and show up for our next recording. And let's do that sooner rather than later.
Absolutely. Yeah. Cool.
Thank you, Josh.
Yeah, thank you. I love seeing you, even if it's only take it. Yeah.
Yeah.